Welcome to Millennium Counseling Center's podcast, where each week we go in depth into all things mental health, addiction recovery, and being our healthiest and happiest self. Enjoy. Okay, well, we are recording, and I'm back with my really good friend, Rahsaan, who's somewhere in the world other than United States, where I am. Great to see you, man.
Good to see you, Oren. Currently Da Nang, Vietnam, and
Hey, amazing,
beautiful place to be.
amazing. And what time is it there?
It is 9:33 a.m., so we are
Okay.
12 hours apart. I am in the future, my friend,
Yes.
and it is
Cool.
bright.
It's dark back here. It's dark. It's dark, man. Well, in leading up to today, we're just I think what I've gotten the most out of our conversations is that we're just authentic and honest with each other, and just being able to share openly and honestly with you is so comfortable, and I just feel energized and at ease.
Yeah, thank you. And I will say the same. It's really nice to speak to someone who has listening skills, who has presence, who has a very wide and disparate view on the world. And I really appreciate the time and the
Yeah,
space
man.
that you provide.
Thank you. Well, and I think that just a few minutes we had before hitting record, like, this segues perfectly into what we were talking about, which is, how are men navigating modern era of relationships, and kind of how are we set up to succeed? How are we set up to not succeed? What's our programming been for the last 50 years slash the last 5,000 years? And how is that affecting men, women, relationships? These conversations, like, are very fascinating to me. So I'm curious, just kind of, how do you process that, and where does your mind initially go talking about
Yeah.
this?
The first thing, it made me think about a conversation I have with a friend of ours back in Chicago. And whenever we talk, he's always saying, "Oh, there's big issues between men and women in America." And he's a black male, an attorney, and he's always speaking from this perspective of women are wanting all these things that men can't provide, or they're asking for too much. And I'm like, what's your basis for this? And I think it's what we've been talking about, where he's a traditional conservative kind of male female role in his household. And so he's always seen kind of the male as the provider and the woman as like the homemaker and builder. And coming across women who are also the provider, where they have degrees, they have skills, they're no longer taking this secondary, I'm solely a homemaker role. And so he feels like it's a challenge for power. And then secondarily, it's like, they don't know how to cook. Like, that's like
Mhm.
what I'm looking for a mate. Is like, he thinks of like his mother, or he thinks of these very traditional roles, and then the women that he's meeting don't have the traditional skills that he's looking for, and they're asking for something different from him. So it's like,
Mm.
be the breadwinner, but also understand my emotions. Talk to me about my feelings. No, when I say something and then say the complete different thing 5 minutes later, know what that actually means. He's like, what am I supposed to do with that?
And don't know that I'm not looking for you to fix it. I'm just looking for you to listen.
Right.
But every fiber of our training and wiring is to fix.
Is the solution
So,
oriented.
yeah.
So
Well, and it's fascinating how in the United States, like, women weren't allowed to have a credit card until the 70s. And so you look at some of these statistics of data points of, like, well, if they couldn't support themselves outside of the home, how many people would have left marriages or not been married if they would have had the freedom to do life independently? And are we just now seeing a more realistic version of what relationships should look like when there isn't the barriers not allowing people to live equally?
It's a good question, and I don't know, I always feel like I'm taking somewhat like a woman's defensive role in these arguments when I have them with him at least, because if a woman didn't have the right to vote or she didn't have the right to get education, and then I think a lot of things changed around World War II where men were gone, but they still needed the factories to run. And so women start taking on these roles and working in a different way than they were before. And if they now have freedoms that they didn't have before, it's really difficult to like take away freedoms from someone or have them doing a role again that they maybe never really wanted to do. I don't know. I don't know, man. As a man that was raised by women, I feel very fortunate to have learned a lot about women and just spending time with women and listening to women and talking to women, and I'm trying to understand them. It's been
Mhm,
fascinating. And
mhm.
I also have friends, and this is something I called up a couple of my friends on. I have friends that are in their 30s and 40s that don't have any female friends. And, it was more like a reflection of like, okay, think about who in your life you would call a friend that's a woman, that's not a family member, or you haven't had a romantic, intimate relationship with. They're like, I don't. It's like, sit with that. What's behind that? What's behind you not, you not engaging with a woman at the level of like a peer or an equal or just somebody you're curious of learning more about, to be multidimensional instead of like an object as you see them. Woman is for this.
I have a similar background where I come from a very like matriarchal dominant family. So a lot of female influence. And I almost feel like in my clinical work, I spent a ton of time trying to help men see the perspective of their female partners. And kind of jokingly, some guys like, well, whose side are you on? And I'm like, well, there- 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 if it feels like I'm trying to kind of take another side, like, okay, but like this is helping you. Like
Right.
your brain needs to be open to new concepts and new understandings of how to interact with the person that you are living with and in a relationship with. And the better that you're able to understand where they're coming from and validate and empathize with their experience, that's only going to strengthen your relationship.
So the question I have there, Oren, is if we take, that client who's in your head right now, what what are they missing? What, like, in their view of how they relate to their wife or partner, what are they missing? Just in like how they think or how they see or how they approach. What's
Mhm.
the disconnect between I
Here's the
like
thing. Here's what I see the most. Here's what I see the most. When wife partner has a negative emotional reaction, a male takes it on like I did something wrong, and they may have done something wrong, but they take it really personally and they don't know how to regulate so that they can lean in and support that feeling. So what's missing is the ability to hold space for their partner and themselves at the same time. It's almost like if there's partners mad, they have to protect themselves because it feels like they're being attacked rather than I can be okay and I can help them be okay.
okay. So this lends to my natural second question. Where do men learn to emotionally regulate themselves and hold space for a woman's emotions when the societal programming around men has been emotions make you weak, don't pay attention to them, anger is the only emotion you need or power,
Well, and when emotion and again, and we've probably seen this a lot in the news and media and politics and other things, is that when women get really emotional, they're the ones that are crazy. They're the ones that are doing it wrong.
right. And
To
so
to
that
only kind of like to continue on what you were saying, right? Where does that training exist? In my office. Um, yep. Pop on in, we can hang out and talk about it. I don't think it exists. I'm sure it exists in some ways,
right.
but I don't think it exists in the ways that really impact the greater population of men in Western society.
So it's funny because there's a huge skills gap and the trainers. So who trains men how to be men? Like if you look at your experience with your dad, what did you learn about how a man handles his emotions from your dad?
Mhm. Well, that's interesting because I never saw my dad be emotional when I was growing up, only saw him really have emotions much later in life. And I learned that happy wife, happy life. So so even like how I make sense of that as it pertains to our conversation is in order to minimize the feelings, you just do the thing that you think is gonna make them happy,
And what's
which is it's something that for the last 20 years, I have absolutely gone against, right? That training, that programming, whether it was intentional or not intentional by my dad, most likely unintentional, like, is gone. Like, that it's the opposite for me. I use the example, and not to throw anyone under the bus, but there's a reality show about, like, home makeovers,
okay.
and the woman walks around and says, "Fix that and do this," and he's just following around, and he does the thing there, and he does the thing there, and I'm just kinda like, "Well, okay, for those roles, like, there's a designer, and then there's a GC and whatever, but, like, within the marriage, like, that is, in my mind, an awful, awful representation of a relationship where one person just walks around and points around and fix that and do that and then you just follow and do all those things, right? Like, that is the epitome of happy wife, happy life, and that training, I think, is very destructive for both people in a relationship.
Yeah. So like what does that type of approach do for someone's confidence, identity, how they identify with their own masculinity?
I think it becomes a task-oriented relationship where if I do this, then you're happy with me, rather than if I show up in this way, I feel more connected to you. So it's what does it do to masculinity? I think we're a task rabbit. It's just like, you can hire me out, right? I'm no different than someone that you can get on the internet and do all these things. Now, obviously, this show isn't like a real representation of a relationship, but it's like I'm like whenever I saw that show, I'd be like, oh yeah, that is no bueno in my world. Like that would not exist.
And so how has the correction of it manifested in how you show up in your relationship? So if that
Mhm.
was the model you saw from your dad, and actually I'll ask another question first and I'll ask this other question. At what age did you realize that that wasn't the right model for you?
26.
And 26. What
Mhm.
happens?
A breakup where I had done all the things. I had task rabbit the shit out of like all of the stuff, and the person said, "You're really nice, you're really kind, but I don't know who you are." And it all started sinking over, like, the next 2 years of therapy. I was like, "This is not operational. This is not helping me get to what it is that I need."
What did you need?
I needed to be a completely separate individual that had my own life that overlapped a little bit with a new person. And if that worked, we would overlap a little bit more. And if that worked, we would overlap a little bit more. And I maintained my autonomy as a person that wanted different things or liked different things or believed different things, regardless of whether or not that made them happy or they agreed.
How important has that autonomy been
A
in your
thousand,
relationship?
yeah, that is, that was the best breakup I could ever have wanted
So
because in my mind, I had made that the relationship that was like, they're this and they're that and they come from this and it's going to be like that and I'm like this is and then it all went away like that. And it was as if my entire future went away. All the things that I had believed were going to happen and I was just left looking in the mirror and trying to figure out like at the core who I was and how I didn't understand like training and what was my programming. I didn't know that then, but, like, I started to kind of, like, have to look at those things, like, how did I become who I am in a relationship? And that was the kind of the inflection point of change for figuring out who I really wanted to be in a relationship.
and then that more autonomous version, how does that or did that I say, how does that show up in your relationship now? Because, there's the spectrum of certain people wanna be together 24/7, certain people are 2 ships in the night, and there's the entire range of everything in between.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
how does that show up in your relationship now?
yeah. So, how it shows up is I absolutely compromise. I do things and don't say things at time in order to preserve the moments, right? But the reason why I came up with the tagline, "Say what matters," is what has been the most helpful for me is that I don't bury the lead. I don't hide from what my truth is, and so my partner knows that we went to this restaurant because they really wanted to, but I had another taste that night, or we were considering this kid name and you really wanted it, but these were the ones that I wanted, and I didn't just say, "Pick whatever you want, and I'll be happy with whatever you want." Like, I had opinions and ideas too, or anything and everything for me was if I had a thought, a feeling, an opinion, an idea, I didn't have to have it, but for the big ones, I needed to recognize how much those things matter to me, and I needed to talk about them.
So how did you know how to use your voice in that situation? Coming from the world of, like, I don't use my voice and then it blows up, and now I desire to start using my voice.
Hit the cosmos? How did we discover aspirin? Like, that seriously, like, there wasn't, like, a moment, like, I mean, I would say that being a therapist and working with people throughout this process, right, like, of my own figuring out of things, I saw patterns of men not opening up about things that seemed really important. And not for the sake of like, this has to change or this has to move, but just this is what's going on with me.
What did it feel like to use your voice for the first time in a relationship in that way?
I don't remember specifically, but like, I remember being probably being pretty tentative. Like, is this really gonna be the is this really gonna be it? Like, do I gotta do this? Yeah, but, like, it's probably the most important thing that I've figured out in 26 years of being a therapist and my own work and relationship, being married for almost 16 years, is saying out loud to your person something that is meaningful and important to you changes everything. To, "I feel tired," to, "I feel taken advantage of," to, "I am sad," to, I need rest." Whatever, like, those have all come out of my mouth.
Right.
So, nothing tangibly changed that moment or the next day, like, but I no longer had to be alone with those experiences. I had a partner that listened to me and heard what was going on with me in a deep way, and that alleviated 80-90% of the distress associated with those feelings and experiences.